Ugh, I really shouldn't have done that. I feel so horrible. My gut is wrenched. I feel guilty and icky and horrible. My name is Casey Berard, and I have a background in traditional Chinese medicine, Reiki, and yoga. And I do chakra therapy and mindfulness coaching to help people get back into the present moment and stop suffering and love their life. Now, we're doing a video series all this year about turning our feelings into friends. You heard me right. I want to encourage people to be more mindful about how they can work with their feelings to reconnect themselves back to themselves. So this month we're working on guilt, and this is video number 1 of 4, where I'm going to do a brief introduction and then talk about the good guilt. I know, I'm a little wild. I'm a feisty soul who believes that our feelings are good and that guilt can be good. Good guilt, you say, Casey. Go ahead, you can laugh at me. But over the years, I have learned, I would say it's probably been 10 years that I've been working with guilt and really understanding it from a mindful place, turning it on its head and looking at how it can be good for me. So I will talk about bad guilt, and I will talk about inspiring guilt. But for today, we're just going to talk about the good guilt. Good guilt is the stuff that motivates us in life. First of all, let's define guilt. Guilt is a feeling that makes us feel awful, usually in the pit of our stomach, sometimes in our heart, sometimes in our lower belly, maybe even in our head. And it warns us that something about our behavior is not working. Period. It's not about who we are. Guilt is not about who we are. It's about our actions, our behavior, and the choices we've made, okay? Now, the cool thing about that is that means, holy, I have all the power. I can transform guilt. I can take guilt from being something that feels yucky to something that actually allows me to create something new in my life. Okay, so here's an example. As a mother, I'm a busy entrepreneur, I have my own hobbies, and I have 2 high needs kids. So I oftentimes, when I was really in the crux of busyness and young kids, would forget things. And boy, I offered myself a lot of self-compassion, but boy, did I really feel guilty because my 3-year-old would be looking at me, or my 10-year-old would be looking at me and going, "Mommy, how could you forget?" And just stab me in the gut with a knife, right? That's guilt. And I would go, "Oh yeah, Casey, how could you forget, Mommy? How could you forget?" And then I learned that I forget because I'm so busy and I'm overwhelmed. So I do a lot of the strategies that I teach my clients. I get back into my focus, into my own business, and into the mindful moment. Now, I have lots of videos on that. If you want to see them, you can link up to them on the YouTube channel or on my website. But for now, I'm just going to summarize it like that. And so when I'm trying to get back into my own business, I want to honor and stay in my integrity and meet the needs of my kids. So I am going to write it down. Now, I know that sounds like an obvious thing to do, but sometimes when you're busy and overwhelmed, you don't always think of the most obvious things to do. So writing it down for me was a huge thing to learn, and it required a little bit of self-discipline because I wanted to just keep going and be spontaneous and, groovy. But then I also realized I wanted to stop feeling guilty. So just that little act of writing stuff down so I would remember more was awesome. And the cool thing is even then, even if I still couldn't do it, I would have maybe 10% of the guilt that I originally had, because I could then go to my child and I could say, "Look, sweetie, I have it on my list. Today got really busy. I'm going to move forward and try and do it tomorrow. I've moved it forward on my list." So that's a way that guilt can be really good, and you can come up with strategies to live through and survive the guilt and soften it. Another way guilt can be really good is when it inspires us to step out of ourselves and be less selfish. We may contribute to our community or to our family or to nature or animals because we feel guilty in a good way that something is going wrong. For example, there were fish getting wrapped up in those plastic 6-pack bottle things. Now, I don't buy that pop anymore, but when I did, I would cut them so that they were no longer circles that could strangle those animals. And I just learned from that simple thing. Just like I learned that water bottles that are not reusable and recyclable are filling up our landfill and causing a lot of plastic garbage. Another area I felt guilty was with plastic bags versus reusable bags. So I used that guilt and that yucky feeling. And I mean, maybe this was only a 2 out of 10 guilt, but it's still making those changes and those transformations helped me. And that was a good, easy to fix way that guilt helped me. Could you come up with a list of good guilts that you could change right now? Behaviors, actions, choices that you're making that you could transform in your life to alleviate some of that small good guilt. Maybe you bring to-go cups to work instead of buying coffee in a non-recyclable, or even a recyclable uses energy. So you could decide to bring a to-go cup. Maybe a good guilt is that you want to spend more time with your kids. So you know that the research says we just have to spend about 20 minutes a day doing what they want to do with us, and they will feel deeply connected to us. So you decide you're going to ask your son or daughter or children, what do you guys want to do? I know my son loves playing video games and I don't, but I love playing them with him because it brings us joy and it connects us. So that's a simple way I could use my guilt of wanting to connect with my son if I'm not connecting, and bring in a strategy that can be done in a quick 20 minutes and it nourishes both of us. Sometimes good guilt involves friends or people in our lives who we've lost touch with. So maybe you could just make a plan to connect with 1 or 2 friends over the next month or 2 and reconnect. And that could be a great way to use some of that good guilt and grow. I hope this has been an interesting video and turned the feeling of guilt on its head for you, allowed you to realize how guilt is about your behavior and how guilt can actually be your friend when you use it. And especially if you use it in these lighter, good sort of maybe 1 to 3 out of 10 in terms of pain levels, guilt, to practice how you can transform and change your life by being a little bit more mindful and making new choices to act in your integrity. Join me next time. We're going to be talking about the bad guilt. And then we'll also talk about a more inspiring form of guilt. And I will later in the 4th video share with you the exercises that I use. And I've created a PDF so you have them for yourself at home. I wish you cheers and blessings on this beautiful day, and we will talk to you soon. If you want to hear more from me, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do share all this stuff with my newsletter group first, and usually have a lot more strategies on there too. This year, the whole year, I'm going to be doing feelings as friends, so we will be touching on a lot of them: fear, shame, guilt, joy, ecstasy, and pleasure, and everything in between. So do subscribe so you can keep in touch and get the PDFs that help you turn these feelings into friends. Cheers and blessings on your path.